Kwanza, jina langu ni Chief Warrant Officer Refio ni Moraidhi. Nimekaa kwa vikosi za jeshi ya Kenya hii kwa muda wa miaka 40. Kitu ya kwanza mimi sijachukua vote, nilichukua kura kwa sababu ya Dr. William Samoei Ruto.
Unatarajia afanye nini kwa hii miaka mitano ambayo amechaguliwa?
Kwa hii muda wa miaka mitano, kitu ya kwanza ningemuomba akiwa rais yetu mpya, watu wasifikirie si binadamu, waanze kumharakisha. It must take time. Yeye ajipange. Kitu ya kwanza, mambo ya health. Huko ni manyumba tu tunaona mazuri, madaktari hakuna, dawa hakuna. Hiyo ni kitu ya kwanza. Number 2, major threat. Vijana, wasichana wale wamejaa kila town, wanatambaa kwa kila town yote Kenya hii. Hii ni time bomb. Washughulikio mambo ya kazi, si wakati msichana anafanya unjangiri ni matusi. Si wakati kijana analewa ni matusi. You must find a solution to any problem. Unanikamata. Number 3, mambo ya corruption. Hapa kusiwe na sacred cows. Ukiwa ni muharibu, iko njera Kamete, iko Keng'ong'o, iko Shimo la Tewa, ingine Naivasha. Si huyu. Namba hiyo ingine, mimi naomba wale walikuwa na mtusi na wale walikuwa na mtusi wakiwa na makamu ya rais wakimbishwe kulingana na sheria.
Naam, hebu tueleze matarajio yako ni yapi kwa hii serikali ya Ruto? Nitakushikia.
Hii serikali ya Ruto, mimi naiomba, sisi tuko na watoto wadogo. Hii mambo ya CCB ama BBC atuondolee, kwa sababu maisha imekuwa ngumu. Kwa sababu unaitishwa jiko, unaitishwa mchere, haujui pale inaenda. Hii mambo imetupeleka ngumu bana. Sasa mimi naomba Mheshimiwa Ruto atuondolee hii mambo na tuende kisawasawa, kwa sababu sisi ni watu wadogo na sisi ni watu wa jua kali. Mimi vile kitu naomba, hii mambo ya watoto wadogo aangalie, na hii mambo ya hurubaru atuangalie, sisi ndio tunalea ama aje, si ndio?
Asante sana. And as the new government takes office, we've seen now Kenyans' attention has now shifted to the fulfillment of the pledges they made during campaign. And Kenyans are optimistic that the new government is going to deliver. Back to you, Smriti.
Margaret, thank you so much. Coming to us live from Nyeri, bringing us sentiments of some of the people in that county. You are watching NTV's continuous coverage on this inauguration day. William Ruto has been sworn in as the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya, and his deputy is Rigathi Gachagua. All right, we bring the conversation to the Nation Centre studio now, and with us our guests still seated here. Thanks so much for your patience, Professor Gitile Naituli, governance analyst, and also Professor Alfred Omenya, a governance analyst. Gentlemen, good to see you on this historic day. Yes. Before we get into the details, let's just get your reactions on how you think the day turned out. We saw a smooth transition of power. What's your analysis of the day?
I think the biggest achievement is peaceful transfer of power, because that is what defines our democracy. So we can say that our democracy now is strongly anchored on 2 feet.
Yes.
And that is very likely to be unshakable in the future, because this is the second very peaceful transfer of power. The second. Number 2, what has inspired for me is the president has started with implementing his manifesto, meaning that you need to treat him, you give him ultimate good faith.
Yes.
That now you implement the entire of his manifesto. And as you do that, because the manifesto was very well crafted, then he may end up being the best, he may beat the Kibaki record. Because the Kibaki so far is the best president we ever had. So he may very well end up beating that record.
All right.
Professor Omenya, what stood out for you today?
Yeah, I think I'm actually one of those people who have been very, very happy, especially when speaking to the international community around what's happening in Kenya. I've actually had a chance to speak to Galaxy TV in Nigeria a number of times, and I've said, without any fear of contradiction, that Kenya actually has the gold standard in elections. People just don't know how bad elections are globally, not just in Africa. And what we've seen this time around is unprecedented, all the way from the voting to the very, very open counting to publicly televised Supreme Court processes, all the way leading to the inauguration today. And I've been challenged that yes, maybe there are other countries that are better, but I'm saying no, I don't know any, really. Not even the United States of America. We've never watched presidential petitions, really, even in those countries. So I think this is a very proud moment for me. I was also very happy that a lot of African countries came to actually see the standard. And these are things that we must not take for granted. I know sometimes we have our own small quarrels, but that does not mean that we are not a great country as far as democracy is concerned. People have highlighted that Alfred, South Africa, where I lived many times, and I tell them, I know the party that will win 10 years from now. They tell me about Ghana, and I know the country was ruled for many years through a military dictator. So as a country, this was a proud moment for us, just in terms of our own process. And again, I think the other very, very interesting thing there is, and I agree with Prof here, is that you see right from day one, a government, the tone of the government is a government that's committed on doing things, not just making, all sorts of promises, on the electoral campaigns and then ignoring them. I think the speech of the president, again, for me, I think that's the most beautiful speeches in this sense, that it was not necessarily an exciting speech. I know our president is excellent in making exciting speeches, but it was actually statements of facts and things that are going to be done today, tomorrow, the swearing in of the judges, the subsidy for the fertilizers coming down, the port reverting to the people of Mombasa. I think that was something very, very impressive. And for the democracy and for government, I think we are off on a very strong start.
Yeah, so something that Professor Gitile wanted to respond to there as he was speaking. Just make it right.
If you would advise the president, so you need to run away from subsidy of anything. You need to allow the market. Deal with the cartels, which undermine the market, so that the market sets the prices. Subsidy is not sustainable because of the nature of the economy. So if I can advise him, he need to run away from that and then deal a bottom blow to the cartels which have controlled the input to agriculture and made agriculture an a sustainable enterprise. That way, I think we are guaranteed.
Prof, and what is exciting, I think it's fascinating because, I mean, we are almost on the same platform, both the critic and the other side. The president put a figure that was fascinating, saying, look here, the fuel subsidy, if we continue till December, will have cost the country 280 billion in terms of supporting your position there.
And he says
280 billion is the government's development budget.
So you're saying basically
the
same breath.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not sustainable.
So run away from that, but then also deal with the tax regime.
Correct.
Because the tax regime is unreasonable. It's not targeted to promote development. It is a tax regime which confuses because it makes no economic sense to take money from you in order to subsidize fuel which you are going to use.
Correct.
The best thing is to leave the money with you and make sure, in terms of taxes, make sure that the market deals with the fuel prices. So that, 60% of the liter you buy for fuel is actually taxes. You understand? Then the problem we have with all the other things we do here, because I mean, if you get a 90 kilogram maize in Tanzania, it's 500, it's what is that, 560 or something shillings, whatever. Okay, here it's like 3 times the production of Tanzania and Uganda. Why? Cartels. Okay, these cartels must be dealt with. And that's the same thing for power. I'm glad he said that is committed to renewable energy by 2030 to have 100% transition to renewable energy. The truth is we are already there because the energy we are producing is huge from the Orokari and all that. The Jubilee government is credited invested heavily in that renewable energy. But then we have another problem with something called the IPPs, independent power producers. These are simply crooks taking money from the people of Kenya unnecessarily, because you go to the website of Kenya Power, it's an open public website, and go to 2020 and you see how the power producers are compensated. The Keningen, which is a government entity, was paid 5 shillings and 48 cents per unit. The other fellows who are paid anything from 19 shillings to 173 shillings per unit. Is there quality different in power quality? You understand?
Not. Yes.
So this is the government robbing you to compensate some people they like.
And there's some interesting comment there that was from Prof. Omenya earlier as we were following what was happening and the reactions from around the country. And what touches the heart of the Mwananchi? There's the price of unga, which has been mentioned by many Kenyans in their reaction, and their hope that it will come down in the next few days, if not weeks. And then there is what was mentioned by the president, and that is the price of fertilizer and operations going back, the port operations going back to Mombasa. These things speak to the heart of Kenyans. But it's something interesting you said. It is actually easy, not to trivialize this, but it's actually easy to attain some of these goals for the Mwananchi, like unga.
How so? Tell us.
Yes, exactly, because you're looking at it, you see, I mean, what the president has said there really is that you can actually take a situation where your production is down, and then you subsidize. Basically, what happens in that sort of situation is that in fact, you end up reducing supply. But on the other hand, you can actually let people suffer a little bit, or subsidize only for a short period. And this is what the president was saying, and this is what I actually wanted to illustrate. We can use it to illustrate. You decide to give subsidized fertilizer to farmers immediately for the short rains. The short rains are starting now.
Yes.
How long do short rains last? Short rains are going to be there in October, November. By December, short rain, that period is ending. We have maize varieties that will have already produced. It actually means that you can actually have maize. You can have maize at the correct price by December this year. Actually, you can have that in the market. But you see, part of the problem is that we actually either have fools, really, or just heartless characters. Because in Kenya, we swing from one extreme to another.
Yes.
Either we produce and there's no market at all, or we are starving and we can't figure out what to do. So immediately you start managing this, saying, okay, fine, we're giving farmers fertilizer. These guys are going to produce. In 3-4 months, we will be having maize, which will present another problem. That yes, what do you do now with that oversupply? If you think through that supply chain, you can break this jinx. You can actually break this jinx. But what happens is that again, we step aside, we let cartels control the market, so that when you overproduce, the person who's meant to be buying, the millers who are meant to be buying from you are not buying.
Yes.
And or are buying at a throwaway price. You are discouraged. The fertilizer price is up. The following year, you don't produce, and then you know, the cycle actually continues. It's a cycle of stupidity, and that's partly why I hope that the president, with his economic advisors, can actually sit down and just make sense out of these things and start dealing with them. And to me, that is why that position on subsidy is very interesting. They've not given a complete solution. What they're saying is that, look here, we may not subsidize fuel. And again, the thinking there is clear, as Prof was highlighting, that, look here, why are we overtaxing you and then subsidizing you?
It's nonsense.
Yes, then the same thing, when it comes to maize, you're saying that, okay, fine, I mean, there may be need for some relief, and yes, I believe government does have the money actually to subsidize if they wanted to, but then this relief is not sustainable. That's the point. That even if government is continuing with this subsidy, it has to be for a very short period in time. This subsidy already just for 1 month has cost us 7 billion.
Yes,
for goodness sake. If this 7 billion was availed, you know, to the sector, we can actually solve the problem.
Do you agree that it's actually easy to implement some of these things for the Mwananchi? As you respond, Professor.
I'm trying to think that focusing on subsidy is a bit too narrow. Just look at the tax regime. Look at the regime that taxes you 20% if you borrow money, for example, from the bank. 20% going to the government. How many people are discouraged from borrowing so they can do something new or expand an existing business? What we need is to address the tax regime, and the prices will set themselves up. Tax regime, remove the cartels. And you know, me, I'm persuaded that the president will deliver, because I'm very sure they have looked at these statistics, which I want to show here. This is the debt, the famous public debt. The first term of Jubilee, the public debt was 3.6 trillion. The money that was authorized by Appropriation Act to pay that debt was 2.6 trillion, meaning that you have left with very little to pay. Remember, the debt now is over 90 trillion, correct? Yes, meaning that we have not been paying this debt. We have just been taking the money from an account called the R50 to pay that debt, and then we put that money in our pocket. Second term, the debt was 3.4 trillion. The money borrowed within those 5 years, up to 2022. The Appropriation Act authorized payment of 2.6 trillion, meaning that what we should be in our debt account today is 748 billion. What is in our account is 9-point-something trillion. So I believe seriously the president knows this. I believe that his people who probably is going to place in the treasury know this, meaning that we are not a poor people. So all he has to do is to go after the people who took the money and return it to us.
Okay, and do you reckon then in that tax regime managing it, at least from what he mentioned, they're trying to manage it through the Hustler Fund, targeting SMEs through chamas and SACCOs, and establishing a ministry of cooperatives specifically for that?
That is, the ministry is good, but I think the Hustler Fund, if I were to advise him, I would be very careful about it. Because you just take the Mamamboga where you live. Mamamboga sells 10 cabbages per day. It's useless to give that Mamamboga money to sell 20 cabbages, because the other 10 will rot. That Mamamboga has appropriated the market. When they go to Sokomujingo, or whatever they call it, to buy in the morning, they know exactly the capacity of that neighborhood to consume. You understand? And that market now is at 95% saturation. It will add very little to the economy if you bring the other 5%.
The thinking isn't for them to expand, or to be able to expand the operation?
Yeah, no, it's to be able to move. I think the thinking from the president side is to be able to transit a micro enterprise, which is what the Mamamboga is, employing 0 to 4 employees, to a small scale enterprise, employing 5 to 19, and that one to a medium enterprise. That is beautiful.
Okay.
If you can plan it like that, is wonderful.
Oh, do you share the same sentiment?
Not really. I think listening to the president carefully, because this one of the things I've tracked, and is one of the issues that I've had with the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. Yeah, because I was really wondering how they'll be able to, you know, transform all these, I call them lumpen proletariats. In fact, that's what they're called. These are people in the welfare sector.
Yes.
They're not people in business. In fact, normally states, you know, actually dole out money to support these people. So, I mean, coming up with a mechanism that somehow, you know, treats these people as normal productive labor, and then anchoring your entire development on it is very dodgy. So, I've been very keen figuring out how Kenya will start developing on the basis of this sector. But I think today there was a bit of a nuance in the president's speech. I listened to this quite carefully because I was very, very keen to see how this hustler fund would actually work. Because I know even banks like Equity before came in to try to lend to that sector.
Yes.
And they had to withdraw very fast. Because you realize that this person is in the business of survival. They're not necessarily in the business of making money. Yeah, so you come and give this person a loan, you give them a burden. And there were quite a number of that sort of thinking in the Kenya Kwanza manifesto that was worrying me. Even on the housing bit, which it didn't speak to today, it had the same thing of giving people mortgages who are earning 10,000. Is my position, is a research position, you do not lend people in that bracket money. You know, right. You are actually giving them a burden they don't have. But to be fair to the president and to Kenya Kwanza, the way I listen to it is that he's actually looking at organizing these guys into chamas, into circles, into all these entities that are quasi economic as such. And what this does, and building that all the way to the national cooperative with the ministry, what that means is that then I'm cushioned as an individual from managing my debt, because it is a chama
yes.
that is actually being lent money. And that way then you can release a lot more money that then actually starts affecting these people directly. If you're a group of border owners, it is not me as an individual who's bearing this burden of debt. You can manage. We are managing that at the cooperative level. Yeah. We are managing that at chama levels and so on. And I think that sort of thinking is good, if you're to ask me. And that is how to get into this space that is not purely economic. It's also a bit of social enterprise. People are meeting because they're relatives. People are meeting because they belong to the same church. So there's a bigger social function, and then you use that particular mechanism to ensure that these people can then get more resources, to put in their small-scale businesses.
All right, before we shift focus, Prof, you want to respond? Go ahead.
I can agree on him on one thing, that's a saturated sector, because it's already absorbing 95% of labor. So I can agree that 105% is a lateral movement. It's not an upward, and therefore makes no sense. But it's not really true that investing in them will abandon them, because we have done it before. You see, Mwai Kibaki tried to expand, to bring money to people so that they can expand their businesses. Yes. And do some other things with the low interest. And he found it difficult to deal with the multinational banks, international banks. So what he didn't do, he went to the micro enterprises. He went to microfinance organization, to circles, if you want to call them like that. And then transformed them into banks. Some of them have grown to become major banks. So investing in the bottom, the way Ruto is saying he will do, though some of those people will transit at the move up, yes. Okay? Others may not, but there is because of that experience, the Kibaki experience within banks tells me that is an exercise that may very well be very productive for Kenya.
Okay. All right. At the top of his speech, the president lauded the IEBC and also the judiciary, and he says he's getting down to business today already, saying that he will appoint the remaining 6 judges and then of the Court of Appeal and preside over their swearing in tomorrow. Tell us, in your view, what is the significance, or rather what is the significance of this? The fact that he lauded them, which he did even when it was announced that he is the president, but the fact that he's down to business today.
Again, I liked that, and I think that's what I was emphasizing also at the start, that there are quite a number of things that can be done in this country. Some things that are being held just because somebody can hold them is just a signature. You see, I mean, the outgoing president never told us why these people were never, appointed, despite the fact that he did not even have the powers to disappoint them. If I may use that, terminology, that is actually a role of JSC, and he just refused to give them appointment because he could. And I think this is very interesting, because I think the president is having both political scores, but at the same time, we are starting to see that maybe he's serious. I was not too sure initially in his campaigns whether he was serious about institutional independence. And today he made several several comments around many institutions. The judiciary, first he said he was very, very happy that you know, the judiciary fund, for example, was released just a week ago. Because if Uhuru Kenyatta didn't release it, he was going to do it. Right. But then he made it better that, you know, from 9 billion, he pushed that to 12 billion. So that is already there in the fund. The fund is signed. And he was saying, I don't see why these people are not actually being appointed. After all, the independence of judiciary demands that the president just appends his signature, unless if there are concerns of national security or criminal issues and so on, which in fact, of course, then revert back to JSC. Yeah. So I like this, that you know, things that were being held in this country purely on the basis of personal issues that were never explained to the Mwananchi, you know, that you can actually action them almost immediately and get the judiciary back on his feet. Somebody may look at it that is capture, but for me it's the other way around. That actually there was no good reason that anybody was ever given why some of these things were not done. And we hope that he gets further and further into a lot of the Kenyatta promises that were never delivered. He told us, for example, that he'll tell us about the contracts of SGR. And all those he told us. As a president, he should have told us that is a state secret, so he'll not tell us. Yes. But he said he'll make it public, and he didn't. We also want leaders who are accountable in that manner. That if you say you're going to do something, then you do it. Or you say you will not. Just tell the public. We are Kenyans, we understand the states of secrets and so on. Come and tell us, as your president, I will not tell you, because the Constitution allows me to keep some secrets for your good. National security invoking. Yeah, but you don't come and tell us you'll do it, and then you don't. Right.
Yes, and I was there when he said he would, and it hasn't happened. But to write on that question still, because there was a bit of a veiled messaging there from now the new president, because this was an appointment pending since 2019. Yes. And now he's also added, you know, budgetary allocation, 3 billion every year to them. Do you see any veiled messaging, especially coming after what has happened at the court, the Supreme Court? Some people saying, oh, he's rewarding them, or it's just something that has been in the offing, and you know, it was meant to happen years ago.
I think what I see is somebody who may very well evolve towards statesman. Because that's what he said by saying that I also are these people in.
On day one.
On day one. Yes. That's what he was saying. He was saying a president should never get personal. That's what he's saying. Yeah. Because you see, the moment the president gets personal, he has descended into the arena. And the president should never descend into the arena. We say the same thing about the judges. The judges should never descend into the arena of the litigants. So the president, the failure to tell us why he cannot appoint them, it means he had no reason other than personal dislike of those individuals. So what Ruto is saying is that, look, a president should never descend that low. So I'm going to fulfill my obligation as the president, and I'm appointing them. The handing more money to the judiciary is a promise that he made in the campaign. He said he will make the independent institutions independent so they can defend our constitution. So he talked about the ethics and anti-corruption, they say making them truly independent. Yes. The DCI, so that they don't prosecute political wars in the guise of prosecuting crime. Yes. And the judiciary. And I think he is now fulfilling those promises. So this is what is likely to happen. And he continues with that trend, then we have a statesman in the office of the president.
Yes, and Mark, I think to give him, just to add again to what Prof is saying there, to give the president a benefit of doubt, first he had mentioned quite a number of other institutions that he had complained about. But then, of course, today again he mentions a number. Of course, he talked about the IG of police, he talked about provincial administration and the chiefs, and being able to just do their jobs. He talked about the Office of the Auditor General. He talked about the Office of the Controller of Budget, and the needs to actually, and that was woven into his speech. It was actually part of his speech, and he didn't have to. Put differently, whom was he trying to please, you know, by saying those things? So again, I would agree with President Naituli here that it is actually possible that the president was serious about these things, the things that concerned him. Of course, were very skeptical initially.
Right.
But then what I liked with the tone of what we saw today is that a number of those people are people he doesn't have to please, and they're people he can use. And he did not even make any specific promises on his campaign trail around them. He could have whined here and there, but then of course he still made this an issue, and he just wasn't making a reference to one, to one institution as such. But we see this as cross-cutting. Mind you, he also said, and that's one of the reasons why I picked up the position of official opposition. He also talked about the opposition, being able to take care of government as exactly well. And we are seeing him, mentioning the judiciary and how it's exactly meant to function and so on. So maybe, and even parliament. He talked about parliamentarians not being able, not today, but he had mentioned that a bit earlier, effective legislation and so on. So maybe if you get that particular yarn and how he has done it, and given that a lot of these people are people that he may not necessarily need to appease directly, so maybe the president is serious about having functional institutions and ensuring that the executive does not interfere with their function.
Right, go ahead.
You see, for me, the test for him is actually if we can get a parliament that works. Because for 10 years, we are no parliament. The last 10 years of Jubilee. Yes. The money that the government spends has to be authorized by parliament. Right. Under two categories. The recurrent expenditure, which is an act of parliament. The budget becomes an act of parliament, right. Which has recurrent and development expenditure. Right. Okay. Now, you'll be surprised to learn that these are central bank statistics directly, that in the first 5 years of Jubilee, there was no authorized internal borrowing. Yes. Zero. And yet, the government borrowed 1.1 trillion over those years. The second year, they borrowed 1.7. When there is zero authorized in domestic, now parliament went along with that. Okay? Yes. So we're just hoping now that parliament can find its feet and depend on the public. But parliament will be given that feet by an executive which is doing everything which is good for Kenya, but not good for the executive. Okay. So you want this public debt, we assume, local, domestic, talking about domestic. Yes. Okay. What are they supposed to pay?
All right. Yeah, so, of course, we have touched on some of the key issues that the president needs to address with immediate effect, mainly the cost of living and bringing that down. But one of his immediate crises is going to be addressing the issue of transition into secondary schools. In January 2023, 1.2 million children from class 8 will need to transition, and an additional 1.3 million from grade 6 will need to join grade 7, and that's junior secondary. So that's a total of 2.5 million students that are going to need to make that transition. Yet, of course, we know that countrywide the schools are congested. So there's that issue, managing the transition, and then there's the big concern, and that is CBC and what to do about that. There have been calls to scrap it. He has said that he's going to engage the public. Prof, let me begin with you and then I'll get your thoughts.
Yes, I think the president will have to plan that transition right now. He can do nothing about it. But in his mind, he knows we never engage changes for good of Kenya. Any change if we engage is for personal good. Remember we changed the police uniform? What was wrong with the one they are wearing? But somebody required money and engineered that change. We have changed our education system 3 times. Tanzania and Uganda and Britain, where we imported it from, they never changed. You understand? So ultimately, the president will have to scrap CBC. CBC, it cannot be implemented in this country because it requires heavy investment. You know, it's the Scandinavian model. Basically, they just went and plugged it to people who have enough money to put into infrastructure, both the physical and the non-physical infrastructure, especially human capital. We don't have that. So what I think is they need to think about going back to the A level, not the 84 either. Because Tanzania and Uganda, They are in the A-level system. The one we inherited and it was working so well. It was depreciating the art people from scientists. There were those technical colleges, if you remember, technical high schools, which you went if you are technically oriented. And eventually you branch off to an engineer. You go to hard schools, which you became a lawyer or whatever. You understand?
Yeah.
We may just have to go back. But right now, they need to manage the transition because they cannot be disrupted. It has to be managed.
Yes.
After that, they simply need to figure out how to scrap this system entirely. It's not implementable in this country.
Professor, do you agree with that?
Yes, well, I agree, but maybe with a bit of nuance. I must say, this is one thing that you know, we brought out to government. I happen to have been chairman. I was the vice chairman of Maranda High School, and I've been associated with a number of schools in the country. I was chairman of another school called Majengo. I'm involved with the Lions High School. And what you're seeing in the country generally is that we have a crisis of quality of education and quality of infrastructure. This thing that is being now highlighted, that we'll have double transition, this is something that has been told to the Ministry of Education time without number. But they knew that they'll be out of office by the time that transition is happening. Already the way the schools are, they cannot take any additional facilities. I've got very, very basic concerns. I mean, we have got children. You can imagine a 12-year-old child going to some school so far away from, you know, from their homes and so on. This thing, the CBC was never really thought through. It was never thought through, and it is time that we actually come to think about it. But the other point I wanted to make is that let's not look at CBC in isolation. Let us look at the entire education sector. The entire education sector is in a mess, all the way from those pre-unit to primary to secondary schools to universities to TVETs. Yeah. Why? Because we have a government that is trying to implement everything at the same time, and they don't even have the resources to do it. You're doing free primary education, you're trying to do free secondary education, and what that translates to is basically poor quality education that you cannot even use to feed farm animals. And what you're saying is that education should not be free. In fact, I don't believe in free education. I believe education should be accessible, right, and it should be good quality. Why are you giving Professor Omenya's child free education that is of poor quality, while I can actually pay for good quality education? Right. And again, what you're seeing, what we are not even discussing here, is the growth of the private sector in this particular area, where now the good quality education is private primary schools, is private secondary schools, and now private universities. I was teaching in a university in this country. When I went back to that same university, I couldn't recognize it, right, because government is not putting, in fact, government is not even paying. As we are talking now, university professors, in fact, were being paid this week. That is just how bad the situation is. Leave alone buying chalk. There is no budget for such things. Or even, yes, so we need to really rethink the entire education sector. I know the CBC thing has to be dealt with urgently, and the president said that they'll put a task force because the consultation was shambolic. He didn't use those particular terms, but
no public participation.
But basically, was saying there was actually no public participation. Yeah. I think that it was shambolic, and this thing was pushed down the throat of Kenyans as it actually were. Yeah. We cannot have so many transitions. My last point on this one, before I leave it, education, a people's education is almost like a people's culture. You have to be very careful before you start tinkering with it. Before you come here and start telling us that, okay, fine, we have a new religion, forget about this Christianity that you practice for years, or Hinduism, or Islam, or whatever it is. You have to be very, very careful how you bring these changes. We cannot just wake up any day. In fact, I think government should not actually be changing education system. These are some of the things that should be going to the referendum. Because this is not just about us and getting some stupid little skills to operate within the village. Yes. This is a broader global culture. If people don't understand what you're doing in Kenya, then it actually undermines basically what we can actually do within that broader global development ecosystem. Yeah. So before you change these things, they require a lot of thought. Right. I'm one of those people who oppose CBC, and I've even opposed the free primary education. This is what killed Kibra Olympic. Yes. As a country, education is so important for us. All of us are here, Mark, Smithy, we are all here because of the education system. There are people, in fact, we are going to create a social upheaval when a bright child from a poor family cannot make it because their own government gave them the most useless quality of education.
Yes.
This is the point where we must be discussing this education.
No, and we're not done with that point, actually, and I'll let you continue.
I think Professor should just say very quietly.
No, he's passionate about it, clearly. No.
Yeah, I was saying that I should say very quietly that our problem is that the only way you steal public money is through projects.
But then you interfere with some places that are secret.
Yeah, Prof,
still the one for the road. Prof, but not the one for our culture and our being.
Prof, just one.
Yes,
still done.
Because that's how you do it. So you imagine changes which are not required because that's the only way you will steal the money. And then you proceed with the change.
Yes. So it's almost, there's consensus. And Professor Gitile has said that he sees it being phased out sooner rather than later. But the transition will have to happen.
Be taken.
Because
if it's not,
because it's already being implemented.
So he's engaging, and it's a very smart way so that it doesn't seem like it's coming from the president who is crapping out, CBC to punish the previous regime or the previous leadership. So he is going to employ or get in a task force to look into this. But it's almost consensus, like you'd say, unanimous decision. We're familiar with the word unanimous. That CBC has not been, the competency-based curriculum has been incompetently implemented. How soon do you see it being phased out?
Yes, well, like you say correctly.
Practically speaking.
Yeah, like you say correctly, we already have children in the system, and we have to think about what to do with them. In case we're changing the system. Then, of course, the one that's being phased out is really not such a big problem. And I may not want to preempt, but of course those are the practicalities that the task force will actually have to come up with and tell us, okay, fine, how do you deal with this, and then how do you deal with this particular generation? I think we almost have 6 classes. We need to be, my point is that we need to actually be responsible. Now we've created a problem that we didn't have before, in addition to the many others that we actually have. Because we'll have to think about these kids. Do they get reintegrated back to 844? And what does that mean? Do we go back to that 1, 2, 3, 4 A-levels system? What I'm saying is that before you tinker with the people's education system, you must really, really think carefully. I'm one of those people who refused at the university, and in fact led to my resignation, to change names of courses, arbitrarily. And those kids were in court. Somebody has given you a degree that nobody, I don't know, something about technical, Bachelor of Technology in insect engineering. And you go out to the engineering board says, we've never recognized such animal, so we can't register you. I'm saying, before you come in and start tweaking things, realize that you're dealing with people's lives, first and foremost. Realize that you're dealing with norms that have taken forever. Realize that you're dealing with people's culture. Why, for example, is the UK, continuing with that system of theirs, or the monarchy? Because those are things that you don't change overnight. The things that anchor society, and education is in that realm. Education is what defines us, is what enables us to communicate, is what basically our entire existence as a country is based on this, actually. So you have to be very, very careful about how you do it, and you need time. These are not the sort of things that you just wake up one day. In fact, I agree with the president. You don't wake up and say CBC is gone, and then what? These are things that, yes, they may be painful, but let's take all the time that we need to take so that eventually, when we're heading that direction, we head there. And that's partly why I wish our education systems should be protected in the Constitution. There should be referendum issues, not just public participation.
All right, Prof, go ahead as we then start to wind up. I think it will take about 2 years, because I think
2 years.
I think there's a government which is maybe a thinking government. At least, I think it's the first time we have a PhD as the president. And therefore the methodologies
it's coming from professors
that you use to go into a solution. First you need to define your problem appropriately. So in order to find an answer to the problem. For me, this CBC thing is the same as the railway. It's the same as the SGR. Because that is the most useless investment, I believe, on the continent of Africa. An investment that should never be made, because we didn't need it. You have to imagine a 6-line highway from Mombasa to Malaba, what it will be to Kenya today. Eateries on the road. Because you know there is one defining thing.
Yes.
The more a truck to Uganda or to Rwanda or to Zaire takes in Kenya, the more we benefit. Consuming your tires, consuming your fuel, eating your food, sleeping in your hotels. You understand?
Yes.
The land prices rise wherever Angundi Road goes. Then eateries, petrol stations. So the road will multiply effect of the road if socioeconomic analysis was done properly. If there was public participation, Kenyans would have told them kindly give us a road.
Yes.
The CBC is just the same thing. It's another investment that was not thought through.
Yes.
So what I'm sensing here is a government that may never do anything without thinking through and consulting the Kenyans according to Article 10.
Let me stay on track on that point because you've introduced something that touches the heart of Mombasa. But let's see how it will translate to the rest of the nation, and that is to revive the operations, or the import operations at the port of Mombasa. How significant this is?
It's very significant because I don't know if you ever traveled to Mombasa lately after that same year thing. Look at the towns that died. Mutito Andre, okay, Mariakani. All the towns that relied on trucks, because you see the railway passes in the bush, depresses the land prices because wherever it passes is shaking the road. It's Ngandend. Even the railway station is Ngandend, so you can't just have an hotel. You can't stop when you are driving your car and go and do an economic activity. That is very significant. Because you see, the clearing system was an enterprise, a huge enterprise by itself. It was just grown overnight, without looking at the socioeconomic analysis of the impact of the economy. So this is extremely significant, and I don't believe the president is doing it for popularity's sake. He is doing it because it's an economic necessity.
And you were saying Mombasa's dying slowly.
Mombasa was dead, and in fact, when this decision was made, I was actually on TV discussing this matter, and we were totally against it. Fortunately, at that exact time, we're discussing this thing with David Ndii, who's now on the president's side. We felt there was just a crime against Mombasa people, because the entire city of Mombasa basically exists because of the port and the operations of the port. And we can count all those activities that relate to the port, from the clearing and forwarding to the CFS to all those bulk storage issues and so on to processing. Actually, there's quite a bit that was actually happening there. And then of course you come up with this idea that you're going to have an inland port and you transfer all those functions there. You are literally killing the economy of an entire county. And one of the things that we're actually saying was that look, Naivasha is a good place in Nakuru County, and they do have an economy already.
Yes.
So why are you killing another county? To an economy of another county, which is very, very significant for us. To transfer this to another county where the efficiencies themselves are questionable, like that double clearance. I mean, you still have to go to the port in Mombasa and verify things, and then of course come to Naivasha to pick up your stuff and so on. Things that logistically was not just making any sense. And then of course, first you put this expensive infrastructure that we believed was going to Kisumu. It ended up in Naivasha. With the biggest debt that we've ever had in history. And in that same sweep, you've actually killed an economy of an entire county. Yeah. So there's some things that have been done, in the outgoing government that's questionable.
Okay. Yeah. I think also one thing this government, the Jubilee administration did not look at, is that the Kenya already has an defective manufacturing sector. It is defective because we import through raw materials through the port of Mombasa, then we track them up country to industries in Nairobi, okay, and the Thika.
Yes.
And then we move finished goods in back
to Mombasa. Exactly.
To Mombasa. That's a defective manufacturing architecture. Yeah. Our factories need to be in Mombasa, not in Nairobi and not in Thika.
Exactly.
So that we get raw materials and then we transport the goods whose value has been earned.
Yes.
So they made the matter as was by this NGR policy, which I don't know where they got it from. instead of correcting the colonial
Yes.
productive architecture, they basically made the problem worse. Because we need to start correcting that. So that when goons move inland, there are goons whose value has already been earned.
Yes.
It's not in double transportation.
Let me just add that, because I mean, there are some things that pain me in this country, and I've been involved in this as part of the Sustainable Urban Economic Development Program for Kenya. Unfortunately, it takes a development partner to think through some of these things, not our people. And just to illustrate the point that you're actually saying, we're looking at the productive capacity of the whole country, and we're asking ourselves basic issues. Let me pick fisheries to just illustrate what Professor Naituli was highlighting there. All the fisheries processing at the coast have collapsed. All the fisheries processing in Kisumu have collapsed. Why? Because our market basically is in Europe. All that fish has to be transported to Nairobi, processed in Nairobi, kept in cold stores in Nairobi, you know, before it finds its way to Europe. And basically what you end up doing is this economy of brokers. Is middlemen who are not adding any value to the fish, who are making the money out of it. What have our neighbors done in Tanzania? For example, if you look at Mwanza and Dar, all the fish that is harvested from Lake Victoria, in fact, Mwanza's cargo bait of the airport is the biggest. It's flown directly to Europe from there. While us, we are still taking our fish through I don't know where. And nobody's adding any basic value, and those industries have closed because they can no longer compete. All the fish that is the sea fish that is being produced in Dar is processed in Dar, and actually, you know, in a matter of hours, that fish is in EU markets. For us, whatever comes from Mombasa is brought here with somebody who does not even have a fish culture. And his owner is a broker, and he must make money by blessing this fish and having some go down in at JK. We need to really rethink some of these things. Honestly, there have been some very stupid policies.
All right. We've got to come to a close, but before we do, I've got a question about the importance of a strong opposition to keep William Ruto's government, President Ruto's government, in check, because that is something that we have lacked in the last few years. A strong opposition, and some may argue it has had an impact on the running of the country. So how critical is it going to be that we actually have a very strong opposition?
Please clarify, are you the leader of the official opposition? You've been tweeting that.
Yes, I am for now.
For now. All right.
Until somebody goes to court to stop it.
Okay, because we saw that Raila Odinga was not present today.
Yes.
He made that very clear. Can we perhaps expect that he will lead the opposition? Your thoughts?
It's absolutely crucial that we have a strong opposition, because we say that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Correct.
Okay, so the tragedy of the Jubilee administration, which I pray to God that we will never get an administration like the one we just ended today, was that it swallowed the parliament. So there was no parliament for 10 years.
Yes.
Because, how do I know that? Nothing came from the executive. Went to that house which was defeated by parliament.
Right.
They passed everything, including those painful taxes they put in 2019 as a result of the handshake. Okay? So, after swallowing parliament, they also swallowed the opposition through the handshake. Handshake was a tragedy for Kenya, basically. So, without opposition, the government does whatever it wants. We need a strong opposition. And I mean, people are saying that Raila retired, and he has not retired. He's still in politics. So he can still lead the opposition. He got 9.6 point something million votes. That is almost near 7 million, the one the president got. So all those people believed in him. So he can still continue offering our services, offering his country services in the opposition.
Right.
We need a strong opposition.
And that's if Professor Omenya is not taking the mantle there.
Yes, well,
to the point.
In fact, Mark, one of the reasons why I declare myself the leader of the official opposition is because, honestly, there's some people who should just go home. Why? We have oversight in the Constitution. Why do we elect members of parliament? When somebody is telling you that they're not going to oversight the executive, then why are they there in parliament? They should just resign. Why do you elect MCAs? When you're telling me that you want to join the executive in doing their work, you are a goat, for goodness sake. I mean, That is not your work. We've employed the executive, we've elected the executive to do the work of the executive.
Yes.
Then we have created a number of oversight institutions. Parliament, that's one of the role of Parliament, is not just to represent us. Parliament is meant to oversight the entire executive. Literally, if our Parliament was functioning, all these things we're talking about of debt and I don't know what, they will not happen. Because Parliament has a planning role. Yeah. Parliament has a budgetary role. Parliament has a quality control role of all people employed by the executive. All the people at the top are actually to be vetted by Parliament. Okay. In this arrangement, we have minorities and majorities, and they're paid. Yes. The leadership are paid. Why are they being paid? They're actually being paid to oversight government. And they're in specific committees preserved for these individuals. What have these committees been doing when the same fellows are complaining that the executive are running amok, for example, on the issue of budgeting and so on? Yes. All these roles and functions have been given to these institutions. The problem has been that the executive captured some of these institutions. Yes. But now we have all these 290-something people. First, they're meant to oversight the executive collectively. And then we have the minority. The minority are meant also to oversight the executive. Simply because our constitution does not have the word opposition. Yes. Does not mean that then you abscond from a responsibility where Kenyans are paying you ridiculous amounts of money and allowances. That's partly why I've declared myself official opposition until those jokers inside there, start doing their work, which is really to oversight the executive. And
you've alluded to them as goats. I don't believe you meant greatest of all time.
Greatest of all time, yes.
Professor Omenya, Professor Naituli, thank you very much for your time. We have to end it here, but the work has just begun for the new government, and a big priority should be as well uniting the nation, as you were bringing that up as a burning point. But the conversation continues because we're handing over to our colleague Salim Swale as we continue with our Decision 2022 coverage. Actually, it ends today.
Right. All right, gentlemen, once again, thanks very much for joining us on this momentous day. Thanks so much for watching. We close this block, and as Mark said, we enter our Swahili block now. I'm Smriti Vidyarthi.
And I'm Mark Masai. Have a good evening.
This is NTV.
Thanks to the delicious taste of Tupika sifted maize meal. But if you ask me, itabidi wazoe. Try the tasty, nutritious Tupika sifted maize meal, now available near you. Ugali ni Tupike.
The County Pension Fund congratulates His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, EGH, and His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua on the election as the President and Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. We wish you all the best as you prepare to take up responsibilities and challenges of your high office. Take control of your future. At the County Pension Fund, we are reimagining retirement. We're living longer, which means retirement is lasting longer. Helping you plan ahead and saving up for retirement is now more important than ever. Talk to us today for the best in-class pension scheme services.
you do your best out there, let us do our best in here with the disinfecting power of Jake. Because Jake cleans and kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs and COVID-19 in your home. Jake, your family's guardian against germs and COVID-19.
Toka! Wewe kama umetumwa na kifo wewe. Toka!
When you're ready to face the situation at hand, let me know.
No, it's not that. Jenna, could you look into the city hospital, the staff, the dealings, anything that could draw attention?
First thing tomorrow morning.
How is he doing? Where is he? Can you please take me to him?
Get peace of mind and protect the ones you love with the power of Dettol Bar Soap. It cleans and protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. So no matter what type of mum you are, trust Dettol.
The County Pension Fund congratulates His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, EGH, and His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua on the election as the President and Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. We wish you all the best as you prepare to take up responsibilities and challenges of your high office. Take control of your future. At the County Pension Fund, we are reimagining retirement. We're living longer, which means retirement is lasting longer. Helping you plan ahead and saving up for retirement is now more important than ever. Talk to us today for the best in-class pension scheme services.
Ero, ni emergency bana.
Ero.
Wazee wamekata kuchukua dowry. We need more cows.
Kata nita video call.
Wewe kijana unataka kutuanza kitu gani?
Sasa, unataka Billy the Goat, Cowboy, ama Cowgirl?
Mkona paka network. Huko.
My friend, unaishi msitu gani? Airtel 4G my friend, ni kama oxygen. Iko kila mahali.
Hiyo ng'ombe na mtoto yake patia mimi 70,000. Hao na kusort aje?
Na cowdy shells. Nitumie na Airtel Money na iko free. Nimereceive. Hata simu nataka ku live stream the game.
Experience our expanded 4G network coverage and send money for free on Airtel to Airtel. Make Chaguo smarter on voice, data, and now on Airtel Money. Airtel, the most affordable network.
How do you keep your toilets clean? I use normal detergent and bleach for washing. The detergent and bleach cleanless can leave behind yellowness, rust, and germs. Harpic's 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach, and kills 99.9% illness-causing germs in your toilet, including the COVID-19 virus.
The County Pension Fund congratulates His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, EGH, and His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua on the election as the President and Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. We wish you all the best as you prepare to take up responsibilities and challenges of your high office. Take control of your future. At the County Pension Fund, we are reimagining retirement. We're living longer, which means retirement is lasting longer. Helping you plan ahead and saving up for retirement is now more important than ever. Talk to us today for the best in-class pension scheme services.
Ni ugonjwa wenye haujitokezi haraka. Unapoteza fahamu kila sehemu. Kama hizo nerves ziko affected, mtu anaweza katwa na hata asikie uchungu.
Sasa huu mkono hata ukishika moto ujui kama umeshika moto.
Jamii imekuwa ikinichukulia vibaya sana.
Kila kinapotembea, wewe una kazi, unaolewa na yule jamaa mgonjwa yule, watoto wako wote watakuwa wagonjwa.
Mimi na vidonda, mtoto ataogeshwa na nani?
Licha ya changamoto anazopitia, hasa uchungu wa kuvipoteza vidole vyake vya miguu na mkono, Mwanaulu hajakata tamaa.
Kila mtu anapitia changamoto, unaweza kuzaliwa na miguu miwili na mwisho kafa na mguu mmoja. Kwa hivyo sisi kitu muhimu tuchukuliane tu kama sote tuko sawa.
Now this is what we call convergence. Come through for the morning fix this and every single Friday right here on NTV. Yes, it's about that time.
You know, the coolest thing about mornings is that a girl and two guys together in the mix, you never know what to expect. You guys are crazy.
From Friday 6, bring your good vibes, bring your picks. From 7 a.m., it's a dope mix. Every single thing on Friday changes with the morning fix.
I went flexer, yeah.
Jameni, kuna siri sirini.
Siri? Siri si ni wawili.
Na ndio maana wakiwa watatu inakuwa ni balaa bin belua.
Ila siri kibarazani si siri tena. Ni nini? Ni gumzo. Gumzo hoye!
Gumzo, 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 gumzo.
Pamoja. Swali langu nawauliza, kama mtungi umepasuka, jongo kashindwa kupanda, je, bendera itasimama?
Kila Jumamosi ni Jumamosi ya gumzo.
At each stage of your business cycle, there are different opportunities and challenges. Has your business evolved and made strides to adapt and be the best in your field? Enter the 2022 Top 100 Mid-Sized Companies Survey and showcase how you have driven success at every stage of your business. Submit your entry at www.eastafricatop100.com. Survey extended till 7th October 2022. Top 100 SMEs. Be seated among the great.